Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of AKP Sports Talk. As always, I'm Ari here with Korea, back on this Monday for another weekend recap from college football and the NFL on Saturday and Sunday. We'll start off with you, Korea, on Friday, Saturday for college football. 2-1, I believe you were on Friday, Saturday. What were your takeaways from your 5 plays? Were you basically broke even for the most part?
Going back Friday, that was a complete horrible dead shit wager. I did not expect Maryland's offense to show up, but they were making Maryland's defense look silly. Billy Edwards couldn't really get that offense going. It was a rough start for him. Just couldn't find a good rhythm there. So it was just a rough game for Maryland. And then it started off. We started off on a rough note as well with Rutgers. Just that offense was horrible on Saturday. Just they could not get anything going, and I was just hoping and praying that we were just not going to have another bad Saturday. But obviously, we'll get into the later half. But Maryland tough loss just outright on Friday night. Just their offense was absolutely horrible, and then same for Rutgers. The run game was not getting anything going, and then there was one play that really did piss me off, though. The fact that it was fourth and inches. They were down 7-0. It's fourth and inches at their own 35, and they decide not to go for it. They have a 22-yard punt, and then Wisconsin goes down the field and scores. They're down 14-0. I think, sometimes in that spot, you got to go for it. I know Shiano is a good old-fashioned, have a good drive down the field, and, let's not get creative, but sometimes you got to get creative in those kind of spots. So that was a tough loss there. But as Ari reminded me over the weekend, Rutgers gets to play UCLA this week. So it's a great bye week for Rutgers. So that's obviously great to see there. Then obviously continuing on with the rest of the slate, obviously pretty much the nightcap. First, since plus afternoon, Mississippi State plus the 34. That was a great sweat-free wager. Obviously, I was getting a little sweaty. When Georgia was probably getting around to, I think they were up, 14, and then was getting near 20, and I was getting a little concerned.
I think you're back. Maybe not.
Am I back on?
Yeah, you're back now.
Am I back on? My power. I don't know. As I gets Friday the 13th here because my power literally just, and then we're back on. I don't know what happened, but maybe we'll talk about Hawaii. No more Mississippi State talk. It was a great winner there. Then Hawaii on the island. I'll take the push. It's not something that I was hoping for, but I'll take it. I thought Hawaii's offense was going to do a little more. They were driving. Obviously, they had that great touchdown throw from Shager, to hit him in the back of the end zone. And it was obviously a 6-point game at half. So it was still looking pretty competitive. They were holding Gene T, outside of the end zone. And we knew he was going to get, obviously, he had to play both halves because obviously it was a close game. So you knew he was going to get involved in the second half. I thought Hawaii was going to match that. But obviously, I'm glad that they just got the push. I knew that Hawaii, it was getting, I was obviously watching that game, the last game of the day, and I saw them turn it over, and Boise State had it with like a minute left in at their 30. So I was a little nervous. I was like, oh God, please don't get a field goal at the last second and screw me here. But Boise State just took the knee. So obviously I'll take the push there. So 2-2-1 weekend for college football there. Rutgers and Maryland. Thanks for not showing up. And then K-State, Colorado. That was a great over. Obviously, great back and forth game. Obviously more in the second half. That's what I was kind of hoping for. As I said, I knew these offenses were going to come out at some point. And, even though the pass rush was getting to Colorado, pretty much the entire game, we knew K-State's pass rush was going to get to them. Shedeur was still making it a little bit interesting, obviously, and there is that questionable PI, no PI that a lot of people have been talking about as well. So, that didn't really matter to me because all I needed was points. And that's what happened, obviously. A little bit of crept over. So, obviously, that was a great look there. And then, obviously, Mississippi State with the great cover, obviously only losing by 10, and then Hawaii on the push there, obviously hoping, if their offense would have done just a little more, obviously they would have obviously easily cover that. But obviously, we'll take their money back there. So 2-2-1 weekend there for me for college football. Ari, how'd you do throughout the entire weekend of college football?
Yeah, not good for me. It started off with Utah on Friday, and it basically took me about a minute to chalk that one when Cam Rising twisted his ankle, looked like, or his ankle got rolled over, something like that, and he was just hampered not only the entire.
I want to say one thing. We are done taking any more Cam Rising and Utah props. Cam Rising is walking glass. Every year this dude is getting injured. Every game this dude is getting injured. He needs to hang it up, go on Indeed, find yourself a job. We are done I am so sick of Cam Rising every week. And it's every week. We got to find out, is this dude going to be healthy on Friday? Oh, I don't know. We got to find out and see for ourselves. And then Friday comes, he's healthy, but he doesn't even look healthy after one. I'll let you go, Ari.
And funny enough, Kyle Whittingham announced today that he's out indefinitely. Obviously, he should have been taken out during the game. And if he doesn't play another game this year, he's eligible for an 8th season. So, well, I don't know whether or not he'll take the 8th season. Obviously, I don't know, but it's possible we see him back next year if he doesn't play again this year. Which, based on how he looked on Friday, I feel like we probably won't see him again this year. More than likely, but obviously you never know. So. Yeah, it took about a minute for me to chalk that. They lose outright because they refuse to go with Isaac Wilson, who obviously isn't great, but at least he's mobile and can make a 5-yard, out route pass that Rising couldn't even make, for most of that game. I mean, he had a couple of, decent passes, but they were more like the receivers adjusting to the duck that he threw more than like him actually like making a good pass. So, not good. San Jose State lost by 7. They had the big fumble return for a touchdown at the end of the first half to tie it up. And then, it was back and forth all game, but just not enough. And then the Penn State USC first half under was brutal. Field goal, push it over at 7 seconds left. Probably a billionth first half under I've had lose with the last second field goal in the last 10 seconds, 30 seconds. It was looking good through the first 10 minutes of the first quarter when it was only 3-0, and then I forget, was it? It was Join they ran the little fake end around that turned into a 75-yard touchdown for USC. So at that point, that was trouble. But then they kind of stopped. Then I think it was a punt and then another touchdown for USC. I made it 14-3, early in the second quarter. And then there was a pick, field goal, punt, field goal that put it at 23 with 2:40 left in the first half. So I see the one stop at that point. But then a field goal with 7 seconds left to push it over. So, a tough 0-3 day where Cam Rising gets hurt. San Jose State was just a bad bet. They lost by 7. And then the Penn State USC went over with 7 seconds left. So, a tough Friday, Saturday for me.
Yeah, or, sometimes, like I said, I had a week like that last week. We just got to get back in the lab, obviously reset. Obviously we have plenty of college football to continue, as we get closer to, the halfway point of the season here, obviously. First, Utah, and now with the Cam Rising news, this man needs to stop playing. Go hang it up. Go get a job. This dude is not going to be playing for an 8th season in college football. There's no way. 8 seasons in what was he in the same? What was his draft class? What was Justin Herbert and all those guys who got drafted 3-4 years ago? What are we still doing talking about Cam Rising in college football? Go get a job, man. So I think and then obviously my season bet Utah to make the playoff. That's I'm so pissed with Utah. And then San Jose State, obviously that was a tough read. You mentioned they made it close. Obviously I saw that big fumble return, but their offense really wasn't producing as much. Colorado State's defense at home was pretty much hunkered down. And then obviously, if it wasn't for that first play for USC, with that big 75 run yard run for Joyner, obviously with his burners, just took off. It probably would have been a great under, and then obviously you had that last second field goal, just to push it over. So, that's that's the luck of games. Sometimes it's a good read, but just execution sometimes it's just not the way it goes. So tough 0-3 weekend for you. But obviously, we're going to make it up soon, obviously with a new week here, but obviously got to recap Sunday here as well. And for me, get out the brooms. Oh, get out the brooms, because I went 3-0. Oh, first, you know what? I got to say, the Cardinals-Packers, I will say thank you to the Packers for cashing that over, because the Cardinals did not do anything, but 24 first half points. I thank you so much to the Packers. Obviously, it was the emergence of Romeo Doubs. Obviously, we've been having an APB out for him. Obviously, this man has been sulking at camp. Obviously, he's been, one of the bigger trade talks of obviously, just how he's been, sulking and how he wants more receptions. And well, here he goes. Obviously, has a 2 TD game. And obviously, we saw Jaden Reed get in the end zone as well. Christian Watson. It was it was a galore for that Packers secondary. And that's what I love back. I love backing Cardinals overs. Obviously, their offense obviously did not really keep them in that game, but they did just enough even themselves. Obviously, they had a touchdown late in that first half, so that obviously would have cashed over anyway. But obviously, thanks to the Packers for doing that themselves. So that was the first half over 23.5 there. The Bengals, it was a little sweaty. The Bengals was a little sweaty, but they did get the win, obviously, and got the cover on Sunday night, obviously, against the Giants. Obviously, first, their offense, that was one of the games of all time. That was definitely one of the games of all time. That was something. We had that as a Sunday night football game. We can definitely say that was a Sunday night football game, right? Got to say thank you, Jesus, for Chase Brown, because Chase Brown is the savior of the masses, because obviously the Bengals were up by 3. Obviously, it was coming out of the 2-minute warning. First play, obviously, he just takes it up the gut and goes into the end zone for the score. So obviously cashing, there was a 10-point lead, and then obviously the Giants, with their ridiculous selves, they go down the field and they say, oh, instead of going for the touchdown, we're going to go for the field goal with the guy who missed it from 45 already tonight. And what does he do?
And wouldn't miss against the Seahawks.
Exactly. Greg Joseph, who was, and the funny thing is, if you remember Greg Joseph against the Giants when he was a member of the Minnesota Vikings, he had that 61-yarder that Minnesota barely beat the Giants. So Greg Joseph is one of the most inconsistent kickers I've ever seen. He excels in some spots, and then he can't make a 45-yarder. So that was a tough one, obviously, for them. But obviously for me, that was a sweat-free winner with the at the end with the Bengals minus 3.5 after a sweaty game, just ridiculous. But you want to talk about sweat-free, Ari? You know what this is, Ari? This is the belt. This is the belt I was talking about. This is the belt I was talking about Friday. You want to go back to Friday? I said the Lions were going to put this belt to Dak Prescott, to CeeDee Lamb, to that Dallas defense. Oh, what did they do, Ari? Oh, what did they do? They pulled their pants down on national television and said, here you go, everybody. We just exposed the frauds in the Dallas Cowboys. That's exactly what they did. It was a gift getting the Lions minus 3. I don't know why people were saying the Lions minus Cowboys plus 3. I saw some people saying, oh, the Cowboys at home. There's no way they're going to lose 3 home games. That was the most ridiculous crap I've ever seen on some people's timelines on Sunday. I couldn't believe people were saying the Lions or the Cowboys plus 3 was a great look. I knew David Montgomery was going to run through that defense. The Lions were – I saw the play. I didn't watch most of the game, but I saw the play where they had Penei Sewell on a hook and ladder from Amon-Ra St. You know they don't give a damn about the Cowboys. That is what BTA stands for. Belt to the behind. That was the max play, and that was a great look. Lions minus 3 was the max play of the weekend. Great. I saw the first half, they were up 17-3. I saw the final score. It was a BTA. Ari, fun stat of the day. The Lions had as many scoring drives as the Cowboys had points on Sunday. Can you believe that? The Lions had 9 scoring drives. The Cowboys ended the game with 9 points. That was a great weekend. 3-0. Ari, how'd you do yesterday?
1-1, and I thought that my Penn State USC first half bet was brutal.
I'm sorry. I watched that whole thing happen on Red Zone. I sat there. I said, "This is unbelievable." Only this would happen to the Eagles, and only the Browns would do some kind of nonsense like that. But I'll let you explain.
Yeah. So I mean, it started off really bad for the Eagles' offense. I think Hurts was like 0 for 5, 0 for 6 to start, just like completely out of sync. They finally get a field goal, and their defense was looking good. You know, Deshaun Watson again, not good. And then I think it was to A.J. Brown, a touchdown that gave him a 10-0 lead with like 7 minutes left in the half. So 7 minutes up by 10. And then the Browns get a field goal, so I'm still looking good, 10-3. Last possession of the half for the Eagles. They drive down the field for a field goal with, I think it was the last 10, 15 seconds, I want to say. Yeah, it was, because the very last play was, it's technically the last play, because then Hurts had a kneel. That was the last play, but a blocked field goal for a touchdown, literally the one thing I couldn't have. It's one thing to have your field goal blocked, but then to have it also returned all the way back was just yeah. So obviously that's just the way it goes sometimes. But then the Bucs covered easily, scored 50 points. It was looking a little bit rough early because they're up 17-0 after the first quarter, I think it was, and then they gave up 20. What was it, they gave up 27 points, I think, in those, or 24. Yeah, they gave up 27 points in the second quarter, and got scored 27-7 in the second quarter. But then they blanked them in the second half. Whatever adjustment they made at halftime obviously worked against Spencer Rattler, who looked pretty good early, but he lost Chris Olave in the first half, so obviously that was a tough break in your first start, losing your top receiver. But they still scored 27. There was a power turn for a touchdown, and then some. Baker threw 3 picks, which obviously helped them score 27 in the second quarter, but then it was a complete domination by the Bucs in the second half, winning 51-27. So 1-1 day for me. You could say it should have been 2-0, but again, that's the way. That was just my weekend overall, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that Eagles first half spread right there is the encompass of how your weekend was, pretty much. Just, it's looking good, and then all of a sudden, I think that has a consideration of being bad beat of the entire year. I'm not even kidding.
Yeah,
that has to be one of the worst losses I think we've had. Obviously the Northwestern one for you was bad. This one was just brutal at the last second. So that was a tough one there. But obviously nice to see the Bucs minus 3.5 easily covered that second half. Obviously you mentioned first half was looking a little rocky. You mentioned they had a great 17 nothing lead, obviously, outside of the first drive looked good, and then they had that fumble return, and obviously they settled for 3 on their second drive, but then obviously they couldn't find an answer for Spencer Rattler in the second quarter, because obviously you mentioned 27 unanswered, so you're looking a little nervous there, but you mentioned second half, that's where they hunkered down, made their adjustments. Obviously we saw Tucker on the ground for the Bucs really emerge. He had those big runs as well, obviously alongside Bucky Irving. Great day for Chris Godwin in the pass game. I saw that I think they totaled almost 600 yards of offense, so great day for the Bucs offense, even though Baker, his wild stat line with all the interceptions and yet obviously all the touchdowns. So, but obviously all you need is 3.5, and they did that full game. So obviously great look for you there. So obviously, tough weekend for you, for at least you got that one win. So we'll take that as momentum into obviously tonight and hoping into the hopefully into the continuing week here. But obviously we got Monday Night Football here, Bills versus the Jets. And tonight we do have a crossover special. Tonight, obviously, I'm on one side, Ari's on the other side. First, I'm going to explain my side here. I'm on the Jets. I'm taking them on the money line here, plus 102 here. Look, I know the whole firing thing, the whole offense is changed. The defense, you could say, is going to maybe take a step down because Saul was gone. There's all that, and but I think, right, when you look at the Jets defense as a whole, right, they've given the Bills a lot of trouble, whether it's at in Buffalo, but especially at MetLife, right? We saw that game last year, right? It was almost the exact same situation. Almost, you could say. Aaron Rodgers goes out on the first drive. Oh no, what are you gonna do? You lost your starting quarterback for the season. They somehow rally and win that game in overtime. And yes, you can say that it was the luck factor. But and you can say what you want, but they just always have the Bills number defensively because the Bills didn't really do that much, in terms of their offense in that last game last year. And yes, that was all the way back in week 1 of last year. So it's so old, but you look at that Bills defense then and now, there's obviously some big questions with that Bills defense. And I think it's a pretty decent day potentially for Breece Hall on the ground. And the big question for me, in terms of the Bills is the bigger question for me is offensively I don't know. It's looking like James Cook is probably going to play. I know he's been limited at practice and it's a toe injury. So that's kind of the worst thing you need, especially for a running back with that power game. And we know the Jets, that's where they're most vulnerable at. So it's not, and as Ari's shaking his head, he's saying it's not looking good potentially. So if James Cook is out, that's a big loss for the Bills right there. And I don't know how Josh Allen does, especially against the secondary that pretty much knows him. And yes, we know he can do it on the ground as well. But, in terms of, and obviously I think Shakir is also injured as well. So that's another pass catcher that, could be out for the Bills. And I just don't want to back, the Bills as road favorites here. Obviously, this is their last road game in the 3-game road trip for them. And, obviously it's been pretty tough for them. Obviously they had that first game against the Ravens where they just couldn't get any offense going. And then they had whatever happened against the Texans where the final drive, they went 3 passes, didn't do anything, had to punt him, and obviously gave the Texans the win here. But now obviously going to the Jets here, and obviously I would like to back the Bills obviously in this final game here, but it's the Jets somehow, some way always have their number. And I think even without even with the firing of Robert Saleh, I think, there's that narrative, it fires up the troops, obviously fires up the guys under a new coach, under a new regime here. And, we'll see what Ulbrich can do, obviously, in his first game as the head coach, obviously as being promoted from the defensive coordinator position here. But I'm just kind of backing, the home dogs here. I'm backing the Jets as home dogs here. Obviously, that line's been slightly going in the Jets' favor kind of all week here since the firing. But I think that I saw that line as low as Bills, potentially -1, but I think it's growing back in the Bills' direction at -1.5 here. So I'm just taking the Jets here on the money line here. I think they can sneak out a win, obviously, against the Bills' offense that they pretty much know. And if they're going to have 2 key guys in terms of their pass catchers and obviously their star running back potentially injured, I think that even hinders them even more, obviously, to score here against a Jets secondary that is obviously one of the best. And obviously the Jets, I forgot, they are getting CJ Mosley back, which is a huge veteran presence for them. Obviously, they kind of needed that veteran presence, I think, which obviously kind of fires them up even more potentially. So I'm just going to back them as the home dog here. Just taking the Jets here, straight up on the money line here, +102. That's my spiel. Ari, why are you on the Bills?
Yeah, everything you said is valid, obviously. Me taking Buffalo has nothing to do with, Saul getting fired and all of that. I agree it could, even fire up the team to an extent, especially with how it came completely out of nowhere, at least from the outside looking in, it seemed like. For me, this is all just about Josh Allen not having a third straight stinker after he's been terrible the past 2 games. I agree the matchup's not great for him. And, if he was to have a big game in this road trip, I would have thought it would be against Houston. But, 9 for 30, I think is historically bad in terms of completion percentage. I forget the exact stat, but it was I think it might have been the worst percentage ever for 30 plus attempts or something along those lines. The Bills' offense is banged up. Like you said, I think Cook was trying towards playing, but it's turf toe, so you don't, it's possible you re-aggravate it if you're not fully healthy. And then Shakir also returned to practicing on Saturday. He's questionable, so we'll see on him. But this is mostly just backing Josh Allen not having a third straight, really bad game. I mean, the Ravens game was really bad, like you said, a couple of weeks ago, where they lost 35-10. And Houston, even though Allen was really bad, they were at least in the game, till the end, until game-winning field goal by Fairbairn at the end. So I think not the momentum, because Josh Allen was terrible, but they at least take to the momentum of being at least in the game against a tough Houston team on the road, and kind of take it into this one where, we'll see if back-to-back New York teams lose at home. We could get the what would be the quadruple or something of New York teams losing, because both the Giants and the Mets lost yesterday. So if the Yankees and the Jets lose today, that would be, the 4 straight in 2 days. That'd be funny, but I guess Buffalo's technically New York too, so I guess you can't really. But when you think of New York teams, I guess you think of the Giants and Jets, obviously, even though they play in New Jersey. But that's the story for another day, obviously. But but yeah, I'm mostly just backing Josh Allen here to not have a third straight really, really bad game. That's really just my narrative with this play. And like you said, the line was going slightly in favor of the Jets, but I think it's been pretty close to, it's never been like a huge spread, so maybe a point or two, but it should be a close divisional game, I think, in the end.
Yeah, obviously you're on. I see why you're on the Bills. Obviously, just kind of backing Josh Allen to not have a third stinker on the road. Obviously, in terms of momentum, both teams really don't have any. Obviously, for the Bills losing back-to-back road games, the Jets obviously coming off that horrible performance in London, obviously just firing their head coach, and now in a completely new regime now, so you can maybe say that's momentum or whatnot. But I see a reason for the Bills.
I was going to say both teams lost 2 in a row, because the Jets lost to Denver the week before, so they're both looking to avoid a third straight loss.
Yeah, I was about to say, and the Jets before that, they had that horrible offensive game against the Broncos where they just could not get anything going, but that was a bad matchup for them offensively. So, I think now, you look at both teams now, obviously both trying to avoid a third straight loss. Obviously, I see your reasoning for the Bills, obviously just backing Josh Allen in the spot, obviously not to have a third straight bad game. Obviously, you mentioned his last completion percentage was yikes. And obviously, in this matchup, I would like to back him, but obviously that Jet secondary, I just think they know him pretty well. But I do see your reasoning for the Bills, obviously. If they do have James Cook, obviously, which is what the signs are pointing to, even though he's battling that turf toe, which, could be a slightly impactful injury, obviously, just in terms of, power on the ground, that could impact him. But obviously I see your reasoning for the Bills. So Ari, he's on the Bills tonight. Obviously, I'm on the Jets. It's a little bit of a one-on-one here, trying to see, obviously, who gets the win here, obviously. But obviously, those are our 2 plays for today. Obviously, you can find all of these plays, of course, on our Twitter below. AKP Sports Talk will have this video. And, of course, our plays for the day, obviously, pretty simple here. One's on one side, one's on the other. So, obviously, which one you want to back, that's up to you here. But, obviously, we'll be back Thursday. We got I forgot another ugly Thursday night game. The Broncos and the Saints. I forgot they in the poster, they didn't even have anyone, but they had Sean Payton as the guy. That, and then for the Saints, no offensive guy, just Cameron Jordan. This is going to be one of those 10-9, 10-7 ugly. It's Spencer Rattler and Bo Nix. Woo! Anyways, we got that on Thursday. Obviously, we're going to have our best bets for the Broncos and the Saints on Thursday. But obviously, that's going to do it for this episode. That's Ari. I'm Korea. We appreciate you guys so much for tuning in, and we will see you guys on Thursday.